Hello and welcome to episode 24 of Modern Media Review. I'm Robin Gibson.
And I'm Sean Gollogly.
And it's 10:38pm, Sean, which is not a bad time check by our standards. Usually it's the afternoon.
That's one of my favourite time checks, Robin.
Thank you.
It's 10:38pm to be precise because of Boris Johnson.
He's ruined my day. Well, he's made it more entertaining, although I don't want to make him sound like a harmless entertainer. But it's been very hard to keep up with all the activity in the Tory leadership race.
Not least because we recorded the podcast yesterday afternoon and Boris, the Minotaur, is out of the maze and he's running loose. Hence, we were covering old news.
Unexpectedly running loose. I mean, originally we were going to review the leadership debates. It seems like a quaint concept that all these people were in the running and they'd a chance of winning the candidacy.
It seems like a million years ago, doesn't it?
Well, not as long ago as when that guy was involved. Remember that guy?
Who was that guy?
The guy we were talking about, you know, the guy.
That guy.
Yeah, the guy that didn't get in. Mark Harper, he was called. Anyway, he wasn't in it. And then they did the Channel 4 debate. And I hate to go over the old ground, so we won't really go over it. But
well, albeit that Boris wouldn't turn up.
Well, he didn't turn up. That was the first sort of fiasco, wasn't it? They all had closing speeches
Yeah.
in the Channel 4 debate. The most fatuous nonsense I've ever heard. Michael Gove, I'm tested in the fire. I'm ready to leave. No, he didn't. I'm ready to lead. Freudian slip there. Ready to lead. He might as well said he was ready for love.
Which would be an awful thought, wouldn't it?
Yes. And then, in fact, I don't know if I'm going to get that one out of my mind. And then Jeremy Hunt, I'm the entrepreneur. I run things. Sounds a bit Jamaican, doesn't it? Or is that maybe it's Chinese or Japanese? I don't know.
Well, he's got no clue. But all these script writers they're using. I mean, have they dug these guys out of the 70s whose last job was Miss World? Where they were asking the girls what they wanted in the world, and it was, to end hunger and bring about world peace.
Well, that's what Rory Stewart said. First he said, I travel, sounding like some sort of futurist rock group. And then he said, I'll heal the anger.
I like that.
You can't even heal anger unless you're running for... You could probably heal anger if you're Miss World, but he ain't going to do it. And then Sajid Javid just said, come together. Presumably...
Under him, yeah.
Under him, beneath him. And then Dominic Raab, who'd been playing the hard man of Brexit, suddenly went all kind of psychedelic and said everyone has to have a chance to shine.
Obviously he was on a come down because once those boys start getting onto the Brexit thing, they become sort of super tough guys. It's like Brexit is the Tory party's Viagra. It really gets them going, doesn't it?
Yeah, except unlike Viagra, it doesn't wear off. They're still going at it. Yeah.
That's probably true. I mean, we've had 2 years of it.
Still going at it when the people they're fucking are losing interest.
Exactly. I mean, it's worse than Sting in his tantric sex sessions.
Anyway, the Channel 4 one didn't have Johnson, but then he turned up for the BBC, and I thought the only notable thing of the BBC debate was Rory Stewart acting weird, if anyone remembers who Rory Stewart is.
Yeah.
He was sort of lolling around in his chair and taking his tie off and rolling up his shirt. And
I mean, he was gurning. I mean, he looked like he was in a K-hole.
Well, have you ever seen anyone in a K-hole?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Well, if he was, he probably then, after the show, he probably went outside and had a fight with an imaginary bouncer, because that was the last example of that I saw. But Johnson turned up for that debate, didn't he? And I suddenly thought, he's like the bad influence guy at school, isn't he? Who turns up and makes everyone else sort of titter and tee-hee and behave really badly, but doesn't take the blame himself.
Well, it was like a chimp's tea party, that BBC one. I mean, or like a kids, like a nursery school kids where they'll start throwing jelly at each other.
It was completely pointless. It did no one any good, and it did Rory Stewart a lot of harm. He got bonked out, everyone else got bonked out, and we ended up with Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt.
Well, then Boris bonks out for the Sky one, doesn't he, as well?
Well, no, but first he had his domestic before that, didn't he?
Oh, man. Unbelievable, really. Or not so. From what I can gather, he'd been down his local Tesco Metro.
You say you can gather it, what do you mean?
Well, this was what they were saying in the Daily Mail, which obviously I take as gospel.
Jesus, okay.
He'd been spotted in the local Tesco Metro browsing the 2-for-1 wine offers, which I quite like the idea.
Are you joking?
Of. No, seriously, yeah. So obviously got, a couple of armfuls of wine, headed back to his new Mrs. Place in Camberwell.
Rough area.
Bit of a step down from Notting Hill, eh?
Yeah.
And got himself on the red wine, spilled some on her sofa, and it's all kicked off. They've had a massive domestic where the police ended up being called. But the funny thing about it was there was an apologist on the next day trying to blow it all over and saying, well, this is pretty normal. This is all pretty normal, that all around the country that the police are called to your house at sort of like 11 o'clock in the evening to interview you because there's been a row, smashing of plates, screaming voices and all sorts of stuff going on. Never happened in my house, mate.
No, it's normal, mate. It's normal in Scotland. People smashing each other's heads in every night and the police being called. Sheriff's court's full every Monday morning. But not on a Friday morning, admittedly.
No, I mean, he's an early starter, so,
But then we can't say no one smashed anyone's face in, did they? So we can't really say that.
No one did, but there was smashing of plates, and apparently the neighbours knocked the door and to check if everyone was okay, which I thought was quite neighbourly. But they were getting a lot of stick because obviously they recorded this screaming row going on and then leaked it to the papers. Well, the rights of wrongs of that, I don't know, but I'd like to think if I was being murdered, obviously not suggesting that Boris was being murdered by his missus or vice versa, I'd like to think that possibly a neighbour might call the police or knock the door to check that everything was all right, rather than just turn the telly up a little bit louder,
It did get a bit ridiculous because you ended up having Jeremy Hunt trying to muscle in and he was on the radio and people were asking him if it was normal sort of thing for him and he made some joke about
big domestic bust
he made some joke about his missus throwing rice at him. I don't know if it was Japanese or Chinese rice. He's probably not sure either.
Well, he's not sure about his nationality of his missus. He called her Japanese the other day and she's Chinese. Maybe the rice throwing incident was his wedding day, which maybe he'd forgotten about. I don't know. What is it about his face?
I don't know. I don't spend much time looking at it.
Is he Botoxed up? Because I can't make out any sort of expression on his face.
Do you think so?
Yeah, definitely. Looks like some sort of like mannequin from, I don't know if people remember C&A, that old department store. But
Man at C&A.
Man at C&A in his sort of like suit and expressionless little face. But yeah, so Boris then backed out of the Sky one, didn't he? He'd sort of like gone into the bunker, really.
Oh, he did his hustings, didn't he, to the Tories, the ageing Tories with Ian Dale.
Ah, man.
Questions about the domestic and giving his 1, 2, 3 priorities, which number 3 was Brexit, which I thought was a bit low on the list. Number 1 was spending on education. Don't know where that came from.
Maybe that was spending on his kids' education, because he's got about 1,000 kids, hasn't he?
Well, I think 6 or 7.
And Eton's not free,
He said that he wanted to make sure that Britain had full fibre. a phrase I've not heard before, except in relation to breakfast cereals.
Well,
I think he meant super fast broadband.
Hang on a minute. Have you seen this? The BBC published, because we've got 160 people effectively voting in the next Tory.
Oh, it's 160,000 people.
Yeah, well, that's what they're saying on the BBC, but you can't believe that, can you? But yeah, 160,000 people, what they're saying. But of those, 38% of them are over 66 years of age.
Well, that's not that bad, though, is it? I mean, that means more than half of them are under that age.
What I'm saying is that they would be very concerned with full fibre. Because being regular in your motions is very, very important to that age group. And anyway, what are they doing voting in the next Prime Minister? Half of them probably can't. Well, if you asked half of them in their Alzheimer test who the Prime Minister is, they probably think it's Harold Macmillan.
He also gave away a bit during that when he was talking about his full fibre. He made this really kind of pejorative remark about Spain, and he said parts of Britain don't have full fibre, and even in a country like Spain, and he sort of spat it out.
Well, I mean, have they got electricity in Spain? That's probably his main issue.
Well, not all over the place, no. They've got full fibre.
They've got full fibre, definitely.
It's this kind of continual disparaging of other countries that aren't England.
Well, that's the type of man that would excel as a foreign secretary. Oh, no.
Yes, but anyway, he did the hustings, and then suddenly we hear he's not going to do a Sky debate, and I'm thinking, well, if he's not going to do it, ain't going to be a very good debate, is it?
No, and it's interesting that, after we'd recorded this podcast last night, Bojo's suddenly...
Do you think we should tell people that we're that unprofessional? Or that much behind the times?
Well, it was only a matter of hours, because all of a sudden, Ian Duncan Smith, who is a stone-cold loser, by the way,
absolutely.
to quote Mr. Trump.
I love that phrase.
Stone-cold loser. Well, he's such a stone-cold winner, apparently, that he's been brought in to revamp the campaign, because...
I've been paying attention to this, but I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was being run by James Wharton, who was a Tory MP, no longer a Tory MP. You wonder, why would you bring in somebody? I don't know if he was even chucked out of his seat, but there can't have been a worse run election campaign ever, has there?
Well, not so far, but they're only trying to appeal to a certain limited electorate. Have you noticed that every time, this goes for the failed candidates, it goes for Jeremy Hunt, and it goes for Boris Johnson, every time they are asked about anything, they very quickly turn it into kind of 50% anti-Jeremy Corbyn one-man rally. Yeah. I heard Jeremy Hunt the other day saying Corbyn is the most ruthless, dangerous, anti-British leader ever.
Oh, he's definitely anti-British.
Well, what does that say about Hitler?
I think he was anti-British.
Yeah, and he was dangerous and ruthless. Probably had a row with his wife as well.
Yeah, threw rice at her, probably. What would Jeremy throw at? A tofu or something, maybe?
What are you saying about him?
Well, he's not a man, is he? He's not a red-blooded, meat-eating man. He won't push the button for a start. If we were going to have a nuclear war, hopefully with Iran, before they get it, would Corbyn push the button? I don't think I could trust him to push the button.
No, you want someone you know is going to push that button, don't you?
Boris will push the button.
Yeah.
Trump will push the button.
But anyway, so after all this weirdness and non-debating, I wake up and I think I texted you about it because I was listening to the preamble to the Nick Ferrari show on LBC, and suddenly I hear, half asleep, that he's going to have Johnson on answering questions for half an hour to listeners. Absolutely incredible.
Well, it was a bolt from the blue. Oh, Boris from the blue.
Well, it turns out he wasn't just doing Nick Ferrari, he was doing the...
Oh, he was all over the shop, man. Talk radio straight after that. And then he stormed around, he went to Richmond, wandering around, much to the bemusement of the people of Richmond, I'd imagine, considering that he was with Goldsmith, who's the local MP, and an arch Brexiteer. Given that Richmond voted 72% to remain, I don't know how popular those two boys would be around there.
Say what you like about Nick Ferrari, and I've said a few things about him, but he is a forensic, persistent interview when he getting at someone. He's like someone sitting there pouring salt on a slug, isn't he? Just watching it gradually shrivel up and die, and he keeps dropping it on bit by bit.
Well, it's not difficult with Boris sometimes, because have you ever seen him where he's well briefed for anything?
He doesn't have a clue about his brief, does he? I don't think he is briefed.
I mean, he's not a stupid man, is he? But he's obviously been able to get through his whole life by just bumptiously brushing things off, not answering the question.
He's not stupid and he's not a buffoon. I tell you what, he's ruthless, dangerous and anti-British.
But the thing is that he strikes me as one of these fellas that when he was involved in any sort of, like, and this is always seems to be the level of his debate, is sort of like sixth form student union, where he was probably just thinking about getting to the bar, you know?
Yeah.
Afterwards, and you get through something as quickly as possible, waffle off some old rubbish, tousle the old blonde hair, smile at the girls in the front seats, and head it off to the bar, mate.
He obviously thinks it's all boring, all this stuff about the backstop.
So beneath him, mate. So beneath him.
Whatever it is. What is it, the GATT 20?
Yeah, the general agreement on...
yeah, I know what it is. I can't remember the full term.
Which Ferrari did actually very well to pin him down to understanding that, you know, there was no way that he could say this was an option, bouncing out with no deal, that they could trade without tariffs. Well, yeah, which was very good of Ferrari, given that these two boys were old pals from when Boris was mayor of London.
Well, I know. Well, you know, he is a Tory boy, Ferrari, but he's a good interviewer, and he obviously decided to. He was very good. Fair play to him. It's been very well documented that he asked him 347 times about when that picture of him and his missus was taken and where it came from. And
oh man, how cringeworthy was that?
Johnson just ran away. But what I thought was really interesting, not answering the question, is that he actually, something that people always accuse Corbyn of, right? He got really petulant. Eventually Ferrari goes like, you won't even tell me when this picture was taken. He went, why should I?
It was just ridiculous. It's like the playground.
Yeah. When Mike from Littlehampton came on and started calling him out about the Garden Bridge and his crummy time as London mayor.
And his route master buses and all that rubbish.
Exactly. And Johnson just said, Mike, I must respectfully reject every single one of your criticisms. You can't answer like that.
But there is something that is appealing about him to a certain group of people. I think they probably spent too much time watching Hugh Grant movies.
I haven't. I don't really know about Hugh Grant movies.
Well, it's that sort of like ruffled public school chap who's a bit of a charmer, but
it's not funny, is it? It's this misplaced British sense of deference when they don't even know they're doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Ferrari interview's been churned over in the media a lot, but I thought it was great at the end when he just chucked in. He left a bit about Steve Bannon till the end. And
yeah, that was good, that. Caught Boris on the hop a little bit.
Well, the best thing he could say was he says, "Oh, that's codswallop," one of his favourite words. Well, everyone knows there's like sort of video footage of Johnson and Bannon in a treehouse drawing up plans in a big book or something. Everyone knows they've done it. What a total fiasco.
Well, Boris was also on Talk Radio, mate.
I can't listen to Talk Radio and Julia Hartley-Brewer and people. Talk Radio makes LBC sound like a bunch of lentil chewing
snowflakes,
crystal waving, puppy stroking, vegans making love,
tree hugging,
making love in a toy box full of gender fluid cuddly Pokemons or something like that. It's a rough channel, mate. But I did read. Did you read that quote?
The one that was knocking about the buses?
Yeah. Someone did one of those questions to him about how do you relax, like they used to ask Theresa May, and she stiffly would say that she enjoyed walking and cooking and, I suppose, breathing and stuff like that. He said... When you read it, he said he liked to make models of buses. This quote, right, there's like a wealth of profound meaning in it. I get old wooden crates and I paint them, and they have to contain 2 wine bottles. Well, there's a starter, isn't it?
Well, he's on the red again, isn't he? There's a bit of an issue here.
How does he relax? He drinks a crate full of wine and then he does something with the boxes.
Well, he's painting painting buses. Absolutely off his face on red wine.
But he says these boxes that I paint, it will have a dividing thing. This has got to be a coded message that he doesn't he doesn't even know, for the Tories tearing the nation apart, hasn't it? And then he says, and this is verbatim, and I turn it into a bus and I paint the passengers enjoying themselves.
I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it?
That's sad, isn't it? Because the passengers aren't enjoying themselves. He's got to paint them doing it. Well, it's very sort of rich coming from a man who... Why is it buses anyway?
It's a metaphor for Britain, isn't it, really?
I'm sure I know what he paints on the side, though. 350 million quid a week. Maybe that's why he's so keen on painting buses.
Well, it's been a success in the past. But doesn't it show you how he's struggled to leave nursery school, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's very childish.
But it's fuelled by lots and lots of... Maybe he thinks red wine is like a Ribena substitute.
The problem is...
He's probably got a whole fleet of these buses in his missus. Maybe that's what she was kicking off about. Not another fucking cardboard fucking red bus, And he's going, one more glass, darling, one more glass.
Every bus, he's got to drink 2 bottles of wine.
It's hard work,
I wonder how many buses he did that night.
Well, he needs a fleet. He's got to get the buses, the old route masters going around London. He's probably having to do maybe 4 or 6 bottles a night. That's only 3 buses.
To get those bad heating systems into the homemade ones, though. He must have to just blow some more hot air into it, mustn't he?
Well, at least he's not short of that.
While this is all going on, we've got the other candidate, Meanwhile. I call him Meanwhile now. I call him Jeremy Meanwhile Hunt. Although I did read that he was quite happy about being called Hunty McHuntface.
No.
Yeah, I read that today.
No.
These people are really, really very willing to debase themselves in any way possible if it means they can get some votes. At least Meanwhile's only just debasing himself. Johnson's gone lower than debasement.
I've just had a flash of him lying in the fetal position, semi-naked underneath bottles and bottles of red wine, struggling to paint some happy faces on the sides of buses.
Well, maybe he should be drinking Irn-Bru, because this is what Meanwhile's been doing. He's been spotted up here in Scotland this week, holding a big fish in a fish place where they catch fish, eating a fish supper. That's fish and chips for the English.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, mate.
And he's been drinking Irn-Bru.
Well, he's missing the point with the Irn-Bru, isn't he?
That's the point. For a start, you really need to drink Irn-Bru with vodka to get any sort of jock credibility. And do it in the morning before a football match. But these politicians are always at it. They're always at the Irn-Bru thing when they come to Scotland. I mean, not with vodka. They never quite learn. And it just makes them seem like superficial dicks. It doesn't make them seem like, their heart's desire is to consummate the union. Although, I suppose that consummating the union could be...
Well, I think consummating the union's apt, really, because doesn't that mean fucking the union? Because
fuck Scotland, which Boris Johnson seems to be fine with, because when he was Spectator editor, do you know about this poem they published?
No.
Describing Scottish people as vermin. Here's the rhyme. Who should face extermination. He also calls Scottish people tartan dwarfs who are polluting our stock. And it says the country should be turned into a ghetto.
Well, they had a report on the lunchtime news. Someone was up in Scotland, obviously the impact that Boris would have on marginal Scottish seats in Edinburgh. That
doesn't even work. The whole idea of Boris Johnson and marginal Scottish seats in Edinburgh, the whole thing's playing with my brain, man.
Well, the journalist that was doing it, she said she was quite shocked, really, because she'd done a series of vox pops asking people about Boris Johnson, and to a man and a woman, they basically said, the best of it was, he's just a public schoolboy clown. And
I think that's such a baddie, isn't he? He's much more dangerous, ruthless and anti-British than that.
Absolutely, but
Scottish Tories probably know that, don't they?
Nicola Sturgeon was saying how difficult the Scottish Tories found it when Boris, they're visibly squirming in their seats when Boris is mentioned as future Prime Minister. But the funny thing about the reporter was, she said, it was very strange. She said, normally when we're doing these vox pops, it's not a problem to get a whole diversity of opinions about one person. She said, I couldn't find a single one that had a kind word to say about Boris.
Yes, well, I think you'll find most Tories are very disliked persons in Scotland.
I mean, would it surprise you if Boris pulled out? If there was just another meltdown and he disappears off into the distance?
It did cross my mind that he might just bail out of the whole thing because he's so kind of... What's the word?
Bipolar?
Do you think he's bipolar?
I don't know.
Maybe he is. He's totally mental, that's for sure. But anyway, we can't carry on talking about this because something else is going to happen sooner. We want to get the podcast finished, don't we?
We do.
Yeah. So let's just say that's that for the Tory leadership race tonight, and thanks for listening. But please do listen to our other podcasts. We're on YouTube. You can subscribe on there. You can also subscribe on iTunes and Spotify.
Aren't we on a new channel now as well?
We're on Google Podcasts because everyone is, because Google just puts you on there because they know everything about what everyone does. And my slippers are on the Google Slippers channel.
It's very reassuring, that, isn't it?
Whatever you do, it's on a Google channel. We're also, obviously, on our own website, hopefully, modernmediareview.com, and we're on Facebook and Twitter. You can get us anywhere you like, really. And on that dramatic pause, we'll say thanks for listening again, and good night.
Catch you later.
It's 11:10 p.m.
Nice time check, mate.
Bye.